thank you very much for being here. This is the first art talk of St.Moritz Art Masters 2013. And first I need to introduce Mr. Gerald Goodrow, that was a member of Christie's in London, and then he was the director of Art Cologne for 5 years, and now he's the curator of this important book, Crossing China, and all this talk will be regarding contemporary art in China. So, Gerald, enjoy your talk.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce my fellow guest speakers here. First, my left is Uli Sigg. Uli Sigg is an extraordinary...
That's Uli Sigg.
Someone who has extraordinary knowledge of the not only Chinese but the Asian art scene in general. He has probably the world's largest collection of Asian art and of Chinese art in particular. Uli Sigg had his first experiences in China many, many years ago when he was working with the first joint venture between a European company and a Chinese company. And later actually became ambassador, the Swiss ambassador to China, Korea, and several other countries at the same time. And during this time, he got to learn a lot about, let's say, the Chinese way of thinking, and also then, of course, about Chinese culture, in particular, Chinese contemporary art. His collection, which I would say is enormous, partly, a very small part is on view here as part of the Art Masters. Painstaking Painting is the title, and it's 4 or 5 artists. It said 4 in the thing, but there are 5 artists named. So, worth seeing. And Uli Sigg is also, in a certain sense, responsible for the fact that the next person sitting to my left, was Meile, has a gallery in Beijing since 2006. Because if I understood correctly, it was Uli Sigg who introduced you to the Chinese art world and took you around, showed studios, the whole art scene. And it was a long process, because that was in the 90s. And I guess about 10 years later, with a lot of persuasion from my far left, to open up a gallery in Beijing. I'm going to talk about the fact that there are so many foreign galleries in China soon. Then to my far right is Chauffeun. Chauffeun is a very famous artist in Beijing. He's a painter, but also probably most famous for his deconstructed, reconstructed furniture, taking antique furniture, antique Chinese furniture, and taking it apart, reassembling it in a kind of postmodern way to kind of combine old tradition and new ideas. In some cases, the recombined chairs look a little bit like Chinese characters. So he's playing also with visual expectations. He's shown internationally, all over the world, and he's has the honor of being the first Chinese artist to be in the collection of the Victoria and Albert Museum, which is, of course, a very, very important, yeah. And then to my direct right is Yang Shu, also an artist, but here today in his role as curator, because it's not uncommon in China that one is a jack of all trades. Yang Shu is a multi-talent, internationally acclaimed artist, but also the founder of a project space in Chongqing, in Sichuan province. It's called the Organ House, and specializes particularly in media art. And we'll talk about that as well in detail. And then the final person I get to introduce is Ai Weiwei, who of course you all know. I hope you also know him as an artist, because in the past year or so he's become known as a kind of dissident, and I worry sometimes that his role as a kind of dissident is overshadowing his role as an artist. He's a well-deserved internationally acclaimed artist, lived for many years in New York, then went back to China, and like many other artists working especially in Beijing, combining the ideas that he brought back from the States into his work and commenting on Chinese culture, old and new. Ai Weiwei can, of course, not be here, but we have a video greeting from him, which I'd like to play now.
The iron tree is come from a series of artworks, which is made of wood. And those wooden tree trunks I find and collected from a mountain range in southern China. The tree trunks are left in the mountains for decades. From a very different kind of a different type of trees. So I collect them and to put them together and to give them a shape as a tree. And later we cast it in iron and sand blasted, so it looks color more even. The whole tree is about 6-7 meters. It's about less than 10 tons, and it takes a lot of energy to cast it and to even just to reconstruct and to have the chance to exhibit it. If I have to talk about what happened in China's art world, I should say there's a lot of artists with quite good skill. The art scene is quite lively, but nothing is related to China's condition. It's really mainly built for the Western market. Person like me, my name cannot even appear in Chinese internet, also in any Chinese magazines or newspapers, and my work cannot be shown in like official show or in galleries at museums. So you can imagine what kind of condition China has. Art and literature, movie, any cultural product is under very severe censorship. And you have a culture police watch every canvas, every piece of work, every line of a story or novel, or every shot of a film. And they're absolutely has absolute power to censor it, to stop it before it to be put in front of the public's eye. And I'm very happy to have a chance to show my work in Switzerland, and I think it gives opportunity for public to review what I'm doing, and I think the location is great. The whole area is it's like dream-like place, so comfortable and of course expensive, but you know, we couldn't find a place like this in China to show my work. Thank you again.
I wonder, maybe with you, Uli, you've been in China at the time and experienced the whole development from. How do you see the problem with censorship, closing of exhibitions, reopening of exhibitions? Is it still a problem today on a grand scale? And if yes, what is being censored?
Of course, it's still a problem today, but maybe later we listen to an artist, how the artist feels about it. We listen to a gallerist, how he feels about it. But yes, the censorship exists, while the production of art is free. So once a work enters the public space, that is when the fun stops. Also, when you export a work or import a work into China, then you need a permit by the Minister of Culture. This has been introduced some 3 years ago, and that is a very severe limitation because it's a test of content, and it's actually censorship. That, in my view, has been a big step back after China had opened up and created, during the time, better and better conditions.
But I can imagine that, say, that regime-critical art could be censored. But I've also read on many occasions and seen that, say, sexuality is a problem. Whereas in the West, you can't even provoke with sexuality anymore. But there you can do art with, let's say, fetuses or human fat, and that's okay. What is being censored? What don't they like?
Actually, that was okay, but it's not okay anymore because that fuck off exhibition caused new legislation, new rules that brutality cannot be shown, human body cannot be shown, sexuality cannot be shown. Before, it was virtually free. And even in that very provocative exhibition you are thinking of, there was a censor going through the exhibition. But a censor has some clear guidance, what they have to look out for. Like, is there a living politician? Is there Mao in a less than or in a disrespectful position? Is there intercourse? If not, it's okay. So that meant that maybe even some dead body, could pass the censorship because it wasn't on the list. But that particular exhibition caused new rules.
Okay. So that actually, in a certain sense, had a negative effect on the development.
It had an effect. Some say it's negative, some consider it positive. But we must say that it indicates that these societies have very different taboos.
Exactly.
So you could actually show works which it would be impossible to show here because, the public order, not necessarily the legal order. Maybe it could pass legal, but there is what we call l'ordre public, which is like a common sense of what's acceptable and not. And it wouldn't pass here. And I did, for instance, exhibition in the United States. They were more strict than China in this respect. Very touchy on some subjects, very liberal on others. So different societies, different taboos.
Yeah, exactly. Chauffeun, have you been affected by censorship with your work?
目前吧还没有碰到这样的问题。
Actually, not really, not yet. He hasn't encountered such problems yet.
How do you and your artist friends deal with this on a daily basis? The idea of censorship, or the fact that you can make anything, but I was asking how one deals with it as an artist, knowing that something could possibly be censored, because it's okay to make anything, but the problem is exhibiting the works in a public way. There were, for example, in the let's say in the 80s and 90s, there were kind of private exhibitions going on in Shanghai and also in Beijing that were basically for a closed circle. How does one deal with it on a daily basis, maybe even from friends?
这个当然了，从89以后，那到现在呢，有很多这样的情况，也是存在的。包括我们那个 听到的和看到的，包括有些展览，可能也举行了一半儿，可能也会被停止，这样的情况都有。当然，我觉得现在，现在全世界的这种，包括互联网啊，包括这个信息的这种交流，我觉得这样的封锁可能怎么说呢？它的力度越来越弱。就是说，我们可以有很多方式的去交流。
Yes, actually, I have experienced that quite often with my friends or colleagues. That their works has been censorship, and there are also sometimes exhibitions was stopped in between of the process because of the censorships. But now, after such a long process, due to the development of internet and social media, this problem has been weakened.
Yang Shu, you're an artist, also a curator. It's been the way that I've been seeing the Chinese art development, say the past 25 years, is also that it has become, in a certain sense, less provocative. It's become more tame. Is this maybe a reaction to censorship, or is it just a natural development that maybe different generations, you're from a younger generation, there are other issues to address, or?
No, I think the censorship will keep going on forever. I mean, since they are there, because I mean they're always like this. Some artists know how to avoid it. You know, it's all depends on what rules you want to play. I feel like this. So as a founder, as a runner of this art space, I always very carefully, you know. Otherwise, your business are, you know, cracked. And this is, I feel like this.
And has censorship affected your actual work as a gallerist in Beijing?
Well, in the daily business, talking about the gallery, we were never affected. Never affected in that part that ever a show would have been closed, or that we had a visit from the police, that we realized it. Probably they were there, but we didn't realize it. So we never had problem in this direction. We have problems, as Willie mentioned, in import-export, but that just started something like 4 years ago, 3.5, 4 years ago. Before it was not like that. You could export, import, whatever, and then they had new rules. So what is difficult is to export things or to import things, because you have to get a license. That means you have to apply before each single piece. And there it happens from time to time that they say no. You're not allowed to export or to import it. But clearly, talking about the shows at the gallery, even so with some sexual moments, let's say, we so far at least never had problems.
And how do you deal with the import-export problem? Do you have, let's say, foreign artists making work in China instead, and so you import the artist and have them work there? Or how do you get around the problem?
Well, partly we can solve it, as you just mentioned, because we do have this artist-in-residence studio where we invite non-Asian artists to live and work there, and of course we show it then. We have an exhibition at the gallery, which then, of course, probably could be checked. We don't know, but we never had problem in this direction. With other things, we simply cannot do. You know, we had, for example, was a very interesting example of one of our artists, Wang Zing Wei. We worked with since 10 years. We sold the works all over the world, and he had now just finished now in Beijing at the Ullin Center, a very important retrospective solo show. And there, some of the works what we wanted to bring back to China were not allowed anymore. So we were allowed to, you know, bring it out, to export it, but not to bring it back for the show. So you never know exactly what will happen, and then if they say no, it's no.
When we hear about Chinese art and about the Chinese art market, we're always hearing about Beijing, Shanghai, sometimes Hong Kong, whereby that's actually more known as a secondary marketplace. But there are other cities that are important for the art scene. Chongqing, of course, is very important in Sichuan, or Chengdu, which is not far away, or in the Pearl River Delta, there's Guangzhou and Shenzhen. and even let's say close to Shanghai is Hangzhou, but we rarely hear about these places. Maybe from a Chinese perspective, you're also in the far west in Chongqing. How do you feel about always being, let's say, in the shadows of Beijing and Shanghai?
It's difficult to explain this because it's different. How to say the roots of administration, because China is so centralized. So Beijing means like everything. You know, you have all of the gallery there, and you have the business there. Of course, Chongqing, it's quite far away, I think. Even not only Chongqing, I think all of the other cities, it's the same. Chongqing even more better because we are there. And also the Sichuan Fine Arts University, it's quite well known in China. So this is make some sense. Yeah, I think it's a reality. Like in Chongqing, you even don't have this single museum. So this year they will finish this art museum, and even you don't have one gallery, good gallery. So you have some, but even don't have nice gallery, which is in the city for 30 million people. So this is a reality.
Is that why you founded your art space, as an opportunity for artists there to show work? Because if there are no museums, let's say no official museums, very few galleries, how do artists show their works?
I don't know. We show our works outside, like in Beijing and Shanghai and Switzerland. For example, I have a gallery in Geneva and a gallery in Australia and in Beijing too. Of course, it's only outside. So for my case, it's just my personal perspective. I want to do something with the local artists. This is what my personal interest.
I wonder, Uli, is there say a kind of, because of this, a kind of also difference in the kind of art that's being produced? Let's say Beijing tends to, if you look at the history, tends to be more political in the art forms, and let's say Guangzhou or the Shenzhen seems to deal more with, say, social issues, let's say socially critical issues. Does this have to do with it, perhaps?
I think it has some influence, but we cannot just locate, a certain trend to a certain city. But because Beijing has so many more artists than any other city, that also means there is much more political art than maybe in another city. But it also depends very much on what kind of art academy they do have. Some, like in Sichuan, they focus very much on painting, or they used to. I think that's opening up. In Hangzhou, they focus very much on the electronic media, multimedia, so you will find a lot of artists working in these media there. So there are many factors, but yes, Beijing attracts the most artists. Even if they are not from Beijing, a majority of successful artists will eventually move to Beijing, except the people in Sichuan, because they keep saying life in Sichuan is so much better than Beijing. That's really their argument.
Well, they also have, there's a long tradition there of having, let's say, foreigners come in, no? At the academy, at the university, there's been a long tradition of exchange.
Not
No? No?
not really. They have some programs, but only for a period of time. So sometimes they want to do, and sometimes they don't want. For example, I have a lot of friends, a professor from Germany or whatever. They say, okay, let's do something with China, with your school. So I report to my director, and okay. Slowly. Okay. So this is not really quite often.
Your art deals, the paintings and also the furniture works, deals with Chinese tradition, combining the old and the new, and reflecting on Chinese tradition. do you consider yourself an artist or a Chinese artist? And how does this affect your work in general? How do you want to be seen? There's a question that most people have if they're interested in this.
Das ist noch schwierig, wenn du gar nicht weißt, um was diskutiert haben, oder? Und dann plötzlich kommt so fragt, dann wird vielleicht der
当
Name.
然我自己觉得我是个中国艺术家。
First of all, of course, I am Chinese artist.
然后至于那个，我觉得这个东西方的这个艺术的这种碰撞啊，在我身上当然也是比较明显。
And also, I think the Western influence and Chineseness from my side, I think this clash is very obvious on my side.
我觉得这个呢，是中国人的一个，也是一个幸运，也是一种悲哀，我觉得。
But I think this is a kind of luck and also a kind of sadness of the Chinese people.
就说这个从我们小的时候就开始，就是有一种文化上的一种焦虑。那么到我30岁的时候呢，我这种文化的这种碰撞呢，就变成一种我自己的一个比较主动的一种选择了。
Since I was small, this has been a kind of worry. You know, this clash is worrying me for quite long, and now I think it's more obvious.
我觉得今天的中国呢，从这个文化教育到这个文本的这种教育上面呢，我觉得是比较西方化的。
Today, the education of Chinese style, it tends to be more westernized.
所以我觉得呢，我做艺术呢，就是我有一种考虑，就是比方说，西方文化的人对我们的影响呢，有点像那个天上下的雨。那么其实我们走在外边的时候，我们身上就会淋到这个，是一个自然的一个接受。
西方的文化，对。He said it very nicely. He said, until now, this Western influence is kind of like when you walk outside, then when it's raining, then the rain will drop on you.
那对于中国文化来说呢，我觉得像那个地下的那个水，是需要我去打一口井来获得的，不是打口井。
The Western, yeah, but the Western culture I forgot to mention. It was natural, it was like rain. But now the Chinese culture, it is like the underwater, the
undercurrent.
Yeah. It's beneath the soil that you need to drill a well to get the water. So that means you have to make an effort.
From the artist side or from the viewer side?
他说呢，是从哪一个？就是从你的就是艺术家的角度，还是从就是观众的角度？
当然从我艺术家的角度。
Of course, it's from my point of view as an artist, personally.
I thank all of you for listening. Thank my guests. So some of the questions were difficult. We could only, of course, touch on the surface of many issues, but that's the nature of such a talk. There are important exhibitions here in town of, say, group exhibitions from the Sigg collection, groups sponsored or put together by the Meile Gallery, exhibitions under the, say, sponsorship of your space, works by the artists here. Take the time, see them all, because it's been my experience. I've been looking at Chinese art for the past 10 years, and it's something that continues to fascinate me, and it's something that once you get in, you can't get out, and you don't want to. So enjoy it. Thank you.